Australia out of the T20 World Cup. So where did it all go wrong? We ask former Aussie captains Michael Clarke and Tim Paine. Afghanistan's success also brings to a close David Warner's international career. We recognise one of the game's most explosive three-format players. So who wins it from here? We preview the semi-finals. Let's go around the wicket. Hello and welcome to Around the Wicket. I'm Neroli Meadows. Callum Ferguson back alongside me and Michael Clarke joining us as well. What a dramatic finish to the Super 8 phase of the T20 World Cup. Australia lost their last two to Afghanistan and India. They needed Bangladesh to upset Afghanistan. They managed to reduce them to just 115. It was game on, drama everywhere you look. Rain delays, crabs on the field. I'm not even joking about the crabs. They had to get crabs off the ground. Then there was rain string, as Adam Zampa coined it on his Instagram. One of the Afghanistan players goes down, grabs his hammy, as Jonathan Trott, the coach, is saying, slow it down. Duckworth Lewis coming into play. At that moment in time, there was 2 runs in it, 81-83. That was the difference between Australia going through or Afghanistan going through. On that note, Michael Clarke, was it disgraceful? Was it amusing? Was it somewhere in between?
I'm dizzy and I'm confused. My God. Look, I think first and foremost, well done to Afghanistan. What an amazing achievement, not only to qualify for the Super 8s, but now qualify for the semi-finals. They deserve a lot of credit. You know, there's a lot of talk about their team leading up to this tournament, and they've got good spin bowlers. Their pace bowlers use great change of pace, and they've got some power hitters. So they deserve to be there and take nothing away from them. If the sniper that got the fields, and I can't even remember who it was at first slip, happened to another player in a different team, not mentioning any other teams, and I think there would be a bit more of a circus about it. But yeah, I think, you know what, I think we just let it go and allow Afghanistan to celebrate this win. I think it's that special to them, to their country, to all of their fans. So I think, and the other thing as well, I don't think any Australian can be kicking too many stones, because we are not squeaky clean when it comes to any part of that type of stuff. So I think let it go, congratulate Afghanistan, and let's look forward to the semis.
Yeah, I think that's the right way to go about this. It was a special moment for Afghanistan cricket, no doubt about it. And also, I do want to point back to when I said on this very show that they were the ones that were going to be the surprise packet. But it was fantastic to see them stick to their game plan all the way through. Yes, they didn't get the runs that they wanted in that first innings, but they'd set their game up around setting up the back end of their innings all the way through. They did set it up, but they didn't follow through. But their spin bowlers saved the day. And that was probably always going to be their strength in this tournament.
You're supposed to allow your teammates to pump you up, Ferg, not do the self-congratulations.
Get in early.
Well played, Ferg. Claim it, buddy. Claim it.
We'll talk more about Afghanistan shortly with Tim Paine joining us. But the Aussies, Michael Clarke, the preparation, the chopping and changing, they never had the same 11, the poor fielding, very uncharacteristic for Australia, missing or leaving Mitch Starc out against Afghanistan. You've got David Warner bringing up Sandpaper Gate. There's a lot of things going into play here. Where do you think it went wrong for Australia?
Well, Nez, when you hear what you just said, that's a lot of distractions, right? In a World Cup campaign, lots of distractions. So at the end of the day, I think we'll pour in the field, particularly against Scotland. We'll pour in the field against Afghanistan. And we weren't the best against India as well in our last game. So I think our fielding certainly let us down. In and around selection, it's a tough one because I'm not over there seeing conditions, and I know they're playing on different pitches. And I'm a big one in picking the best 11 for the opposition you play in the conditions you play in. Obviously, a lot of talk about Starkey missing against Afghanistan, and I think if you speak to any Afghanistan batsman, they'd probably prefer to face anybody else in that Australian lineup, whether it be another quick or another spinner than Mitchell Starc. Starkey being our fastest bowler and what he can do with that new ball. So that was an interesting selection, but it's certainly, I thought Ashton Agar held his own. I thought he bowled very well, did a good job with that new ball. But yeah, Starkey would have been disappointed for sure to not be picked against Afghanistan and then have to come in and, bowl at his best against India. And unfortunately for him, certainly one over got tapped. So, look, anytime you lose, there's a lot of questions. I think our fielding hurt us a lot. And I don't know. Was it our attitude against Afghanistan? I think if we were switched on like we were against India, I think we would have won that game against Afghanistan. So, number of questions, not many answers.
Well, just to follow up on a few of those. So let's go on to Starkey. How much of that is also knowing the player, knowing the personality? Mitch Starkey is not somebody that wants to be left out either. And when you're the captain or the selector, how much do you need to know that for him, he's a confidence player, isn't he? You captained him a lot.
No, Starkey certainly is, and he wants to play every game, and he wants to be the leading wicket taker, and he wants to be MVP of the tournament, and he's done that before in World Cups. So, and he's in good form. He bowled like a genius at the important stage of the IPL, won his team the IPL, really, and then comes to the Caribbean full in form and full of confidence. So, it was a big decision, and I think selecting a team is harder than it looks. You've got to keep all of that stuff in mind. You've got to have it one eye on the next game, one eye on the semi-final, one eye on the final. That's not the player's job and responsibility. The player's responsibility is to focus on what's in front of you, just that moment, just that game, and don't look too far ahead. But as a selector, you need to. So I think Starkey would have been frustrated and disappointed that he was left out against Afghanistan. Now, did that hurt his confidence, or did he question some things leading up to India? I don't really know, because 3 out of the 4 overs he bowled pretty well. It's 1 over, Rohit Sharma tapped him. I think he took 29 off his over that would have hurt him as well. So, yeah, you're right though, Nez. You do. That's part of leadership, coaching or captain. You've got to look at the individual player and work out how to get the best out of him.
Yeah, it just felt for me that we were leaving out probably our biggest power play new ball asset going into a game that we knew was always going to be really important to win, to make sure we get through to the next round. And I feel like we missed a trick with that one. He's the hottest hand with the new ball in world cricket at the moment, and I think we missed a trick.
The fielding, as Pup brought up. Now, you said on this show, this is how it works, Ferg. I pump you up. You said it's a barometer of the Australian team, and it was a barometer. It let them down.
Yeah, so often it's what we hang our hat on as Australians going into big tournaments. That was always a big thing when I was coming through, playing under both Pup and also Ricky Ponting. So it was disappointing to see us field in that way. Whether the schedule didn't allow us to get as much work into our fielding as we'd normally hoped to. It was a very hectic schedule towards the back end of the tournament, but our fielding was a bit of an issue all the way through. So it's always an attitude thing, fielding, and that's what the Australians have always been big on, and it let us down in this tournament.
Is that what you think, Pup? It's an attitude thing?
I agree 100%. Look, nobody means to drop catches, but to me, it was our ground fielding, our throwing back to Matthew Wade, our energy in the field, and then the drop catches on top of that. And again, it wasn't one game. It was consistent throughout the series, and we're a better fielding unit than that. And Ferg's 100% right. That's our discipline. That's our non-negotiable, no-brainer. We are the best fielding team in the world, and when we win World Cups, we show that. Unfortunately, and I know it wasn't just about fielding. We didn't bowl well enough at certain stages. We didn't bat well enough. But for an Australian team, I think, even listening to Tom Moody, who was at the ground against Afghanistan, he said that's the worst he's ever seen an Australian team field. Wow. That's heavy criticism.
So, Papa, whose responsibility? Is that an individual's responsibility, a captain, a coach, selectors? Who owns that?
I think it's like Ferg said, it's attitude. I think the players have to be accountable for that. I think, whether and again, you don't need to do fielding practice every day to create that energy and have that intent and know how important every run saved is in the field. They're the rules of cricket. Save every run gives you more chance of winning. So I think it's the players that need to take accountability there. And yeah, it'll just be an area that I'm sure this team will look at and say, we didn't get it right early. We didn't get it right at all throughout the tournament, but we certainly didn't get it right early enough. And I think the other things that you mentioned in and around distractions, there's probably a number of those things that they will look at and go, did we make the right decision here? Did we arrive as a full team early enough? Were we prepared as well as we could be? Like, there's a million different questions. When you win, all of that's swept under the carpet. When you don't, you look at everything.
And just one more thing that I do want to look at as we wrap this up, the comments around the Scotland game and having England's fate in Australia's hands, words of mother cricket, spirit of the game, the fact that it ended up being Bangladesh having Australia's fate in their hands and all the drama that went with it, I can't help but think if this was roles reversed, we would be getting stuck into England. Do we need to be getting stuck into the Aussies for the way that all this conversation unfolded within the team? What do you think, Pop?
I think there might just be a few English people. I won't necessarily say players, but people that send a few text messages saying the word karma. That's all. But yeah, look, I think a lot was made of that England stuff. I listened to what Joshy Hazelwood said, and I thought he was having a bit of a laugh and taking the mickey a little bit. So from our perspective, Australians' perspective now, and as fans, we just have to cop it on the chin. If the Poms get stuck into us and mention the word karma, we just have to cop it on the chin.
I'm just trying to put my hand up, that's all. We're all putting our hand up here, aren't we? We've got to eat a bit of humble pie. Don't go anywhere because David Warner's international career has come to a close. We're going to talk about that next. One of the greatest players we will ever see in the green and gold. David Warner's international career has come to a close. Unfortunately for he and the Aussies, it came to a close with a bit of a whimper. 6 off 6 balls up against India. He is one of the greatest examples, perhaps even the first main example of somebody who went from T20 cricket and ethos into the longer form of the game with great success. Michael Clarke, you captained him a lot. You played with him a lot, both at New South Wales and for Australia. How do you describe his international career?
Yeah, he was a brilliant player, Davey. There's no doubt he's polarised throughout his career, but nobody can disrespect what he's achieved on the field. Across all 3 formats, he started as a T20 player and had the skill and the hard work to improve and change his game to be a successful Test player and one-day player. I think he deserves a lot of credit for how he's entertained all around the world. His energy, his attitude, the way he walked out and batted for Australia, opening the batting and setting the tone, I think deserves a lot of credit. You know, Davey's one of those players that you wanted him in your team, you didn't want to play against him. And I think he's been pretty consistent all the way through his career with, you know, his personality. He's a tough bugger, there's no doubt about it. You know, on the field, he doesn't hold back. And like I say, I think Australia's got to see a number of sides of Davey. So people have their opinion. Like I say, he has polarised, but I think everybody should pay him the respect he deserves as a player and how he's entertained over a long period of time for Australia.
You mentioned those words there, he never held back. How do you think he's going to be in retirement? There is talk of the book. He brought up Sandpapergate halfway through this World Cup. Should there be people nervous on the truth bombs that he could potentially drop in retirement?
I don't think he will. I think you always, you know, when you're playing, you always have to protect your teammates or your establishment, or there's always a reason where you can't tell the complete truth. And I think it's no different in retirement. You know, I think when you go and write an autobiography, generally when you retire, it's your truth as well. It mightn't necessarily be the truth. It's your side of things. So you also have to be careful with that. I don't think Davey will want this to continue, the sandpaper stuff to continue to be brought up. I'm sure he'll write a book or do something. I've got no doubt about it, but I still think he'll protect people, as people protect him as well throughout his career. I think when you're part of a team sport, you know, that just sticks with you. So yeah, you write the book and you tell your truth, but you always leave little bits out because you don't want to hurt other people. And Sandpaper Gate is one thing that I think the whole of the country wants to move on from. So, going deep into that again, I don't think Davey will do that.
At the end of the day, no matter what we do, it is the people and the relationships that you remember the most as much as anything else, the runs on the board, for example. He's known as the Bull. He is an agitator. He was also known as the Reverend through phases of his career. What have you made of his international career, Fer?
Oh, look, I think Pup's right. I think for the most part, he was very consistent with who he was through his career, apart from maybe that Reverend phase, which was a very famous one. But I did play a bit with him through that period, and it was quite humorous. But what you would say is, exactly like Pup said, you wanted him in your team because he changed the game, and he'd take everything away from the opposition when they were trying to set a tone with the ball at the start of day one in a test match. Davey would take it away from you before you batted an eyelid, and that's what the Australians, I think, and I hope the fans will remember him for. He walked out there, faced the first ball and took the game away from and to the opposition. And certainly, from my point of view, I'll remember that across 3 formats, 4900s, 9850s for his country across 3 formats. Incredible career.
So we know that he's walking away from the game. How much other changes are you expecting ahead of the next T20 World Cup in a couple of years, Pup? Because of the mainstay 11 for this World Cup, only Tim David was under the age of 30. Do you think that there could be a huge upheaval and turnover before the next T20 World Cup? And if so, when does that happen?
Yeah. Well, I think now's the time, Nez, to be honest. I used to think, leading up to or getting to a World Cup, you play your best team and age doesn't matter. But I think after a World Cup campaign, again, the selectors should have one eye on the next World Cup. So I think we will see some changes. I don't think Davey will be the only one that played his last game for Australia. I think you might see some guys walk away from 2020 cricket internationally and maybe just keep playing Test cricket or one-day cricket or just Test cricket. Age, okay, I'm not too concerned about how old players are, but I just think with how much cricket we have, it seems like just about all these guys now are getting involved with these domestic T20 tournaments all around the world, not just the IPL. That's going to take up more time and commitment as well. So I'd be surprised if there's not a number of players that didn't play their last T20 game for Australia.
A reminder as well, in 2022, Australia also missed out on that semi-final spot. So it's been back-to-back campaigns now in this form of the game. Michael Clarke, thank you so much for your thoughts. This is our last episode of Around the Wicket. Until next summer, it's been wonderful having you on board the team, and we really appreciate you backing us in as a new project. So thanks for joining us every week.
Thanks, guys. Thanks for having me. I've absolutely loved it.
Great to hear. Tim Paine is up next as we preview the semi-finals at the T20 World Cup. Incredible scenes at the T20 World Cup in the West Indies as Afghanistan book their first ever spot in a semi-final at a World Cup. Absolute pandemonium, wonderful celebrations. They made it through at the expense of Australia. And straight afterwards, Rashid Khan was talking once more about the fact that Australia does not face Afghanistan in bilaterals. Tim Paine, former Aussie skipper, joins us now. This is a really complex issue, and we'll talk about the semi-finals shortly. But Paine, do you think that Australia should be facing Afghanistan in bilaterals and not just at ICC events?
Yeah, I think I'd certainly like to see it. I don't like the fact that we're sort of picking and choosing a little bit. When we need to play them in World Cups, we're happy to. And then bilateral series have been scheduled for a couple of times now, and we've called them off. So yeah, I think we should be playing them. When we needed to win through in the 50 over World Cup, we had no problem playing them. When we needed to win the other night, we had no problem playing them. So just playing them in big events when it serves us or suits us, I don't like how that looks.
I've got to say, this is a really complex issue, and as a massive cricket fan, and I love Rashid Khan, for example, I consider him a mate, and I'm so happy for him, and I'm so happy for the players, and I understand that people are not defined by their rulers. But this sits really uncomfortably with me as well. It's a wonderful story on one side, but on the other side, you've got women and girls who aren't educated and can't work and cannot play cricket. And so if somebody doesn't take a stand in some way, shape or form, I'm not sure where it leaves us in amongst these celebrations. I'm not sure if I've articulated myself particularly well there, Ferg, but it's complex.
Yeah, it's very complex, and it becomes very political at a much higher level than my pay grade. But certainly the women's rights issue is significant. But also, I like Paine's point about the inconsistency of the way we're going about it at the moment. Yes, we're okay with playing them in a big tournament where we need the points for the win, etc. But then to say no to a bilateral series, I don't like the inconsistency either. It hurts me seeing these players being knocked back on our borders, though. Like that, from a personal level, like you said, that's tough to watch.
Like I say, the players I absolutely feel for.
I think as well, by not playing them, we can play them and shine a light on them as well. We don't have to abandon Afghanistan's men's cricket team because of it. The bilateral series could be something we use to raise awareness and try and help women in Afghanistan, rather than just shutting the door and saying we're not going to play them in bilateral series because at the moment doesn't suit us.
Yeah.
And I think that's a great point. That's
really
exactly what I'm trying to do with this conversation is, yes, let's celebrate what they've done, but also let's not forget the reality of what is happening. And the women's cricket team, they're being helped by Australia at the moment, but they're not playing cricket because they're not allowed to. Okay, Afghanistan up against South Africa. South Africa have won some really close contests in this World Cup. Paine, have you seen enough to think that they've shaken that choking tag?
No, I certainly haven't. I think next game is where we're going to see it, aren't we? I mean, they've made it to semi-finals before. We'll wait and see. I think Afghanistan's going to be a real challenge for them. We'll wait and see what the conditions are like. South Africa have played well enough in this tournament to win games, but I think by their own admission so far, they haven't played their best game of cricket, which is a great position to be in some ways, and in other ways, you'd be a little bit nervous because your form hasn't quite been where it is. What we do know is if Afghanistan are in this game, they've got that sort of excitement and energy at the moment that they're carrying through the last couple of really close wins themselves, and they've got some world-class spinners and a couple of dangerous batters as well. So I wouldn't write them off, but I think South Africa would go in favourites. Really
fascinating tweet from Dale Steyn as well when it comes to Kagiso Rabada. He said, and we know that Dale Steyn is a lovely guy, aggressive on the field, but he said an aggressive Rabada equals a winning South Africa team. When he gives a stuff is what I'll put in here. And he showed that today. We inevitably win. What did you make of those comments?
That was eyebrow raising, no doubt about it. I thought it was a bit of a backhander to Rabada. I think there's no other way to look at it. He was held back as well in this last game till the 18th over. It's an interesting one. I think he's trying to get the best out of Kagiso Rabada by sending that tweet out on the eve of a big finals campaign. From South Africa's point of view, I feel like they're actually starting to find ways to win instead of finding ways to lose through this tournament so far. They've gone about it using more spin than they have traditionally in big tournaments. Yes, the conditions suit, but they've also gone down fast bowlers' route for longer and more often than they probably needed to in past tournaments. So I feel like they're starting to learn. But how long can you keep winning so many close games? It's a matter of whether they've got the ability to just maintain that, or they're going to need an easy kill, I reckon, if they're going to win this tournament. I think they've used a fair bit of that tight winning mentality. It's got to wear you thin.
In a word, who wins this one? Who goes through to the final?
Yeah, I think South Africa win this one.
Paine?
South Africa.
Moving on to India up against England. Virat Kohli and his form, just 66 runs, a couple of ducks as well. It's been very un-Kohli-like. What's going wrong, do you think, Paine?
Look, I think T20 cricket can be like that at times. His role to go out and open the batting is to be really aggressive, to try and put opposition teams under pressure and to put them on the back foot. And sometimes when you play that way, it doesn't always work. But as we've talked about so many times before, I feel like we're repeating ourselves. He's one of the best players ever to play the game. You'd be a brave man to write him off come this semi-final. I know England would see him as an absolute huge threat and a key wicket. He's certainly someone that can play a major impact on deciding who wins this game. And he's done it before in many, many big games, whether it's Test cricket, T20 cricket, World Cup cricket. He's delivered on the biggest stage. These are the games he loves. Wouldn't be surprised if he turns it on in one of the next two.
Opening alongside the skipper Rohit Sharma, who did turn it on against the Aussies. 92 off 41. You love watching him bat when he's up and about.
He's one of my favourites. He'd be in my top 2 or 3 to watch in world cricket, I'd say, along with Travis Head, obviously. Just so dominant at the top of the order when they get going and so easy on the eye. Unfortunately, I've watched him do it against Australia far too often. But I think he just has that ability to do it once he's set in a really high percentage manner. He plays good cricket shots really powerfully. So gee, that was great value to watch as much as it hurt Australia.
So what do you think, Paine, in this one? What's it going to come down to? And remembering a quirk in this World Cup is that the first semi-final between South Africa and Afghanistan has a reserve day if there's wet weather. England and India, there's no reserve day. India would go through if it's abandoned. What do you think about this one?
Oh, would they? That's an absolute shock for me to hear that, Nez. But no, look, it is going to be an amazing game of cricket. Two fantastic teams, lots of quality spin from the Indians. I mean, the Indians have also got now great fast bowling. I just lean to India at the moment. I think they've got a little bit more depth and consistency in that batting lineup, and Hardik Pandya back in form certainly helps that. Jasper Bumrah, Jofra Archer, Mark Wood. There is names aplenty in this game, which you would expect in semi-final cricket. I can't wait to watch it. I would be just leaning towards India.
In a word, who are you going for?
Yeah, I think India. I think it'll be a bit more comfortable than that. I'm going to say they're going to win it comfortably, India. I just think they're in fantastic form.
More than a word, but that's okay. Tim Paine, thank you so much for joining us on Around the Wicket. We really appreciate it.
No worries, Neroli. Good to see you, Callum.
Always a pleasure, Tim.
Don't go anywhere because Callum Ferguson's going to take on the short stuff next.
No wonder he's being mobbed by his teammates. That is incredible skill. It looked like a fantastic shot. Boundary.
He didn't think he was going to get there.
It looked like for the moment he left his bat, it looked like it was going to beat the man. And he put in a dive and somehow threw out a hand. Let's have a look. Absolutely incredible.
Brilliant.
Incredible performance from Marnus Labuschagne there. The Aussies could have used a bit of that time for the short stuff. How good was that catch?
Incredible. Absolutely outstanding. Full-length dive, perfect timing, didn't break stride. Incredible.
Carried on a bit though, didn't he?
You can do what you like when you catch them like that, Nez.
Pat Cummins took 2 hat-tricks. One of them he missed. Have you ever missed a milestone?
Not my own, no. I self-congratulate. You heard that earlier in the show.
Certainly have. Who wins this World Cup?
India by the length of Brabham Strait.
That's it from us for this season of Around the Wicket. From behind the scenes, a big thank you to John Webb, and thanks for tuning in.